Despite their significant contributions to Art Nouveau, Margaret and Frances Macdonald are rather obscure historical figures. If you haven't heard of them, you're in for such a treat. The sisters were pioneering Scotland-based artists who primarily lent their talents to creative collaborations, first with one another, and then with their respective husbands, artist and designer Herbert MacNair, and the celebrated architect, designer, and artist Charles Rennie Mackintosh. Though the four, as they were collectively known, were eclipsed by Mackintosh's renown, the sisters' dreamy designs influenced the trajectory of Art Nouveau, as well as some of their most famous contemporaries. This is Several Circles. An extraordinary confluence of ordered symmetry and spontaneous botanical embellishment, Margaret and Frances Macdonald's lyrical designs epitomize the ideals of Art Nouveau. Elongated female figures harmonize with geometric forms, and if the work of Gustav Klimt comes to mind, that's because the Austrian art star was captivated by their style, though the sisters are far lesser known today. The Macdonalds hailed from the English town of Tipton. Margaret was born in 1864, followed by Frances in 1873. Little is known about their upbringing, so their stories really begin circa 1890, when their father's work as an engineer and coal mine manager moved the family to his native Glasgow in Scotland. There, Margaret and Frances promptly enrolled at the esteemed Glasgow School of Art. They were actually amongst the first group of women admitted to the institution, thanks to a progressive director at the school's helm. The experimental confidence in the sisters' work indicates the possibility of some prior training, and at the very least, a keen awareness of important artists in their day, particularly the English illustrator Aubrey Beardsley, whose provocative drawings accompanied Oscar Wilde's Salome and magazines alike. Margaret and Frances created independent artworks that echo their shared aesthetic, but it was their collaborative spirit that caught the attention of the school's director, Francis Newbery. In 1893, Newbery introduced the sisters to two apprentice architects with styles similar to theirs, Charles Rennie Mackintosh and Herbert MacNair. Mackintosh and MacNair were close Glasgow-born friends, and the four, as the united pairs were subsequently known, took to one another both creatively and romantically. The four innovated enchanting designs that would come to define the so-called Glasgow Style, which made an international impact on contemporary visual culture from the early 1890s until around 1914. Though Mackintosh became the face of the Glasgow Style, it was actually cultivated by a large group of Glaswegian creators and students from the Glasgow School of Art. They melded Celtic motifs with the flat elegance of Japanese woodblock prints, favored distinctively feminine subjects, and decorations derived from the natural world. They valued handcrafting in alignment with the arts and crafts movement, symbolism's literary and mythological allusions, and the sleek, sinewy aesthetic of Art Nouveau, a concurrent movement in which form and function met through fine art, design, and architecture. As such, the four worked across painting, printmaking, textile design, embroidery, and metalwork. Margaret and Frances established their own studio in the mid-1890s and continued to work together until 1899, when Frances married Herbert MacNair and the two relocated to Liverpool, where he taught design at the university level. Margaret married Charles Rennie Mackintosh in 1900, and of the four, the Mackintoshes would become the more prominent design duo. As Scotland's leading architect and designer, Charles's monumental legacy includes the Glasgow Herald Building, otherwise known as the Lighthouse, the House for an Art Lover, built after Charles's death according to his designs, the original Willow Tea Rooms in Glasgow, Hill House, a remarkable manor house in the Scottish town of Helensburgh, and the Mackintosh Building at the Glasgow School of Art, which was severely damaged by a fire in 2014, restored, and then tragically destroyed by a second fire in 2018. And while history more or less sidelined Margaret's role in these projects, her exquisite decorative panels significantly elevated Charles's interiors. "Margaret has genius," Charles said. "I only have talent." In the year 1900, Gustav Klimt and his fellow Vienna secessionists invited the four to exhibit at their dedicated building in the Austrian capital. Charles's interior designs were of great inspiration to the architect and designer Joseph Hoffmann, and Klimt's Beethoven frieze, which he painted on the walls of the Secession building a year later, reveals hints of the sisters' influence. With a wild fan base in Vienna and beyond, the Mackintoshes landed a major commission for a music salon in the home of a Viennese art patron. As was often the case, Margaret's gesso panels were perhaps the commission's most demanding focal points. Despite the Glasgow style's popularity, Glasgow didn't quite attract the same hype as Vienna or Paris, so the Mackintoshes left Scotland circa 1914 for a brief foray on England's Suffolk coast. Margaret's output ceased for several years due to poor health, and her only known painting from this period is The Little Hills, a delightful subterranean image. In 1915, the couple moved to London in search of new commissions, but their years in the English capital fell short of their former glory, mainly due to World War I. Margaret's brief return to painting in London yielded striking new compositions, such as La Morte Parfumée and The Legend of the Blackthorns. The war affected Frances and Herbert too, who were already struggling financially. Herbert stopped creating, but Frances persisted through the hardship. Man makes the beads of life, but woman must thread them, painted between 1912 and 1915, showcases the resentment she must have felt when their destitution forced her to put her passion aside to support the family. At just 48 years old in 1921, she died from a cerebral hemorrhage, after which Herbert destroyed most of her work. He died in 1955, outliving all three of his former peers. A couple years after Frances's death, Charles and Margaret ventured to the sunny south of France. No known work by Margaret exists from her twilight years, whereas Charles painted prolifically during this time. When he died at age 60 in 1928, Margaret was left rudderless. She traveled throughout Europe endeavoring to revive her late husband's celebrity, until her own poor health anchored her back at their London studio, where she died age 68 in 1933. History has all but forgotten Margaret and Frances Macdonald, but their legacy survives through Mackintosh's landmarks and the few institutions that hold their work, including the Hunterian Art Gallery and the Kelvinsgrove Museum in Glasgow, the Scottish National Gallery of Modern Art in Edinburgh, and the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool. And while their fame pales in comparison to that of Klimt's, it's high time the sisters get their rightful place in the spotlight. Thanks for watching Several Circles. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos about the lives and work of extraordinary artists from across history to the present day.